Hello, family and friends of First Presbyterian Church. This coming Sunday, our text comes from one of Paul's letters. And this letter is to members of a little congregation, the congregation of Christians in Corinth. I wonder sometimes if we remember that when we read Paul's letters in the New Testament, what we are really doing is reading Paul's personal mail from him to some people in another church. He didn't write it, I don't think he wrote it, knowing that one day we would be reading it as Holy Scripture. And do you know why he wrote most of his letters? Because the church was facing a problem, or a church was facing a challenge, or some theological controversy. Years ago, I realized we would not have any, or at least we wouldn't have most of the letters from Paul, if it weren't for the fact that there were troubles in the church. Now think about that. We know that Paul wrote several letters to this Corinthian church, and that it was a church in trouble. There were divisions in this church. People were taking sides over their favorite preacher. Can you imagine such a thing? People were divided over which gifts were the real spiritual gifts, which gifts were the best spiritual gifts, the most important ones. And there were plenty of other things for them to fight about. Now, maybe this was to be expected. This is a young church trying to figure out what it means to follow Christ and to be the church, and they really didn't have any other models ahead of them to show them the way. In addition, they were living in challenging circumstances, in a very challenging culture, and that could put a stress on relationships. They were living in a capital city with two major ports, and when you have two major ports, it means people from all over the world, with their religions, their attitudes, their norms, their cultures, they are all flooding into the city. So this was a city of Jews and Gentiles. It was what we call today a pluralistic culture. The Christian church in that culture was a minority movement, and there was not any certainty that this church would survive in a place like Corinth beyond a generation or two. Now, does any of this sound familiar? The Corinthian church is under stress. The relationships are under stress. And in the midst of all of this, Paul shares with them what becomes one of our most famous scriptures and beloved scriptures, 1 Corinthians 13, that beautiful hymn to love. In that hymn, he reminds them that of all the gifts they have, faith, hope, and love, the greatest is love. And in the passage we'll read on Sunday, Paul is encouraging them to put this love into action. Paul has become aware that Jewish Christians in Jerusalem are suffering. They are poor to begin with, and they're facing some financial challenges due to famine and other conditions beyond their control. I will tell you more about that on Sunday. You'll just have to come to hear about those circumstances. Now, Paul has been going from church to raise money to help them in their time of need. The church in Philippi, a very poor church, has raised money to send to their brothers and sisters in Jerusalem. And Paul will lift up them as an example, hoping that the Corinthian Christians will do the same. He encourages them to give from their hearts. Now that is love in action. I've seen that kind of love many, many times, lately after the hurricane in western North Carolina, and many times in places right here at First Presbyterian. I want to thank you for your many expressions of love and generosity. The money, the sharing of your time and gifts, all are outward signs of your love. We'll be talking more about that this coming Sunday, and I do look forward to being with you on Sunday, whether it be in person or online. May the peace of Christ be with you. See you soon.